Hello, I'm Anita and welcome to our Tudor Coronation Keepsake Blanket Make-Along. So I'm just going to give you a little reminder of all the things that you'll need to take part in the Make-Along. You'll need your yarn, and you can go to tudor.com to find a list of the colours you'll need, or you can go to your favourite yarn retailer. There are 13 balls of bonus DK. You will also need crochet hooks. I've got bamboo hooks here, or nice Tudor soft grip hooks, and you will need a 4mm and a 3.5mm of whichever hooks you choose. Week 1 starts with a granny square. So if you're new to crochet, this is a nice gentle beginning. It will get you used to all of the stitches, it will get you used to how the make-along works, and most importantly, it will get you used to reading the pattern. And if you're not familiar with patterns, don't worry, because I'll be giving you lots of hints and tips throughout to help you understand the pattern. And then we are going to make the 4 corner squares that we're going to join later. And we're also going to be making these little jewel centres for our border that we're going to join later. And this is a really fun way to start off the blanket, because it gives you lots of experience of granny squares. You get to use all of the colours, and making these squares is a nice little job that you can do in front of the TV. You don't have to worry about patterns or counting. It's just a relaxing, fun thing to do. And by the time we get to the joining, you'll have them all made and you will be well ahead. And don't worry if you're new to crochet and you need some extra help. You can go to the Tudor Facebook Make-Along group. There's lots of help and support there. It's a very friendly group, and there'll always be somebody 24 hours a day who can help you with any problems that you might have, and I'll be dropping in too. There are videos to help you too, lots of detail, and you can watch those as many times as you need. Just keep rewinding, keep watching the videos, and all of the techniques that you need are explained in the videos. So let's get going with week 1. Okay, so we're starting in the centre of the blanket, and we're going to use the 4mm hook and the cream yarn, and we're going to make our granny square. I always start from the outside of the ball. I find it's a guaranteed way that I don't get in a tangle. If you like to pull from the centre of the ball, that's absolutely fine. So there are different ways you can hold your hook. If you ask 1,000 crocheters how they hold their hook, you'll probably get 1,000 different answers. But I hold my hook like a pencil. If you prefer, you can hold your hook like a knife. It's all about finding what's most comfortable for you. And you may need to try a few different grips if you're new to crochet, just to find what feels best. But I hold my hook like a pencil, and I hold my yarn across my fingers like this. So the yarn is against my little finger, and that's how I get my tension. Again, you may need to try different ways of holding your yarn to find what's most comfortable for you. So we're going to start with a slip knot, and to make the slip knot, I wrap the yarn over my finger, around, over to the left, and then pinch the yarn with your thumb and pop that loop underneath to make your slip knot. I'll do that again. So place the yarn over your finger, wrap it around, over to the left, pull through and make your slip knot. I'm going to pop that on my hook and give it a little pull, not too tight. You should be able to see a little bit of daylight. And now we're going to chain 3 and we're going to use that to make a central loop to work our granny square into. So to make a chain, yarn over the hook and pull the hook through. That's one chain. Yarn over, pull the hook through. That's two chains. Yarn over, pull the hook through, and that's three chains. And you want to make sure that the chains aren't too tight. If you're really having to tug the hook, then they're probably a little bit tight. The hook should slide easily through the chains. And when we're counting chains, we don't count the chain that's on the hook. We only count what's below the hook. So we've got 1, 2, 3 chains that we're going to use to make our loop. So to turn this into a loop, I'm going to take hold of the bottom chain, turn it round, and I'm going to insert the hook through the 2 loops of the first chain. So that's 1 and 2. So the 2 loops are on the hook. And then to complete the loop, I'm going to take my yarn over the hook. I'm going to pull it through all of the loops on the hook, and that makes my little loop that forms the centre of my granny square. So now we're going to work some stitches into that loop, and we're going to start by making some height to allow us to work our stitches. So we're going to chain 2, so yarn over and pull through, that's 1 chain, yarn over and pull through, and that's 2 chains. And now I'm going to work my stitches over this little tail that's hanging down, and that will give us a nice neat centre. And if the centre's a little bit loose, we can pull that at the end just to tighten it up. So now I'm going to work some treble crochet stitches into the centre of that loop. So to work a treble crochet stitch, we yarn over the hook, and I'm going to insert my hook into the very centre of that ring. So there it goes through the middle. If you're very new to crochet and you find it hard to find the centre of that ring, then you can start by chaining 4, and that will give you a slightly larger ring to work into. So yarn over, insert the hook into the ring, pick up the yarn underneath and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and that's a treble crochet. I'll show you that again. So we yarn over the hook, insert it right into the middle of that ring, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So these 2 chains count as our first treble crochet, and in the pattern you'll see this repeated quite often. It will say 2 chains count as the first stitch. So that's 1 because the 2 chains count as our first stitch, 2 and 3 treble crochet, and that's US double crochet, and the pattern will give you the abbreviations if you're working in US terms. So that's our first 3 stitches in the loop, and now we're going to turn a corner. So to do this, we're going to chain again. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, And we're now going to work 3 more treble crochet into that central hole. So yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. I'm still working over this tail. Do another one. So yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, and there is our first little corner. It's like magic, isn't it? Look at that. So now we're just going to carry on and complete the centre. So we've got another corner. So 1 chain, 2 chain, and then 3 more treble crochet into the centre. So yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and again, and again. So now we have 3 sides, and then 1 more. So 2 chains, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then 2 more treble crochet, and then we're going to finish off by joining the 2 sides together. So we're going to chain 2, and if you've made granny squares before, you might find that the way I fasten off before the next round is slightly different to what you've done before. The reason I do this is because when you're crocheting a square in one colour, you can quite often see the joins, and you get a line of joins, but by doing it this way it really minimises the appearance of that join. So I've got my 2 chains that I started with here, so we've got 1 chain, 2 chain that count as the first stitch. I'm going to ignore those, and I'm going to put my hook through the 2 loops at the top of this first proper treble crochet. So I'm going to put my hook in, yarn over, and I'm going to make a slip stitch. So I'm just going to pull my hook through the loops, through the loop on the hook, and that is the centre of my granny square complete. Okay, so I've worked over my tail, and if this centre looks a little bit loose, you can just give the tail a pull and it pulls it in nice and tight. Now before we move on to round 2, I'm going to mark the front of the blanket, and this side that we've been working on is the front of the blanket. So this is the right side, and throughout the pattern you'll notice that it says either right side up or right side down, and we're going to be sometimes working rounds with the right side facing up and sometimes working with the right side facing down. There are various reasons for this, and I'll go into more detail about that as we get through the blanket, but I'm just going to mark the front. You can use a stitch marker if you want to, but I find that for the first few rounds that can get in the way and sometimes get caught. So I like to use a piece of scrap yarn, nice contrasting colour so it's easy to see, and if you just pop your hook under one of the stitches, make a loop of yarn, pull it through, and then just pull the tails of the yarn through your loop, and that's marking the front of your blanket, and it's nice and easy to see, and this isn't going to get caught up on anything as you're working. So now we're going to work round 2. Round 2 is worked with the right side facing down. So we're going to turn this over and we're going to start working this round with the right side facing down. So I'm going to start off as I did before by chaining 2. So 1, 2, and that counts as our first treble crochet. And we're now going to work a corner in this space here. So to make the corner, we're going to yarn over, treble crochet, and 1 more. So those first 2 chains count as the first treble crochet, and then we've got 2 more. Chain 2 and 3 more treble crochet in that same corner space. This little corner, and then I'm going to repeat this in the next 3 corners. So that's 3 treble crochet, followed by 2 chains, and then 3 treble crochet. And again, 1, 2, 3, and 2 chains. And then the last one. 1, 2, 3, 2 chains, and then 3 more. And we're going to finish off this round in exactly the same way as we did the one before. So we're going to ignore those first 2 chains that count as the first treble crochet, and we're going to pop the hook under those 2 loops at the top of the first real treble. Yarn over and slip stitch to join. So now we have 2 rounds of our granny square. Round 3 is worked with the right side up. So we're going to turn it over again. So we've got our marker at the front, and you're going to start seeing a pattern forming now. So we're going to chain 2, and this time we've got a space right here. So in addition to our corners, we have a space in the middle, and we're going to fill that space with 3 treble crochet. So our 2 chains count as the first one. So we need to make 2 more into that space. So that's 3. So now we have a corner, and that's worked in exactly the same way as the round before. So that's 1, 2, 3. And now we have another space on the side, so I'm going to fill that one with 3 treble crochet. And a corner. 2, 3, and 2 chains. 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to carry on round this round, and I'll meet you when we get to the end and I'm fastening off, and I'll show you what to do next. So I'm on my last corner now. So we've got our 3 trebles, and remember these are US double crochet. Chain 2, oops, chain 2, and then 3 more, and then I'm going to fasten off same way as before. We're going to ignore these first 2 chains, pop my hook under the 2 loops at the top of the first proper treble, yarn over and slip stitch to join. And that is my first 3 rounds of the square completed. And by ignoring those chains and slip stitching into the top of the first treble, the joins are virtually invisible, and it just gives you a really nice neat finish, particularly noticeable when you're crocheting in one colour. That's why I like to do that. So our centre granny square has 9 rounds, and each round you make after this is done in exactly the same way. It just has an additional set of 3 treble crochet on each side. So you'll see on this one I've got 2 spaces to fill with treble crochets before I get to my corner, and 2 spaces, and on the next round I will have 3 spaces on the side to fill before I get to the corner. One more time, I'm going to turn, because this round has the right side facing down. If you're not sure, just check the pattern, because it will always tell you whether you have the right side, should have the right side facing up or the right side facing down, and your marker will show you where that is. So right side facing down, marker is underneath. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to work into that space. So that's 2 trebles, 1, 2, and then my corner, and I'm just going to keep working around this square So this is round 4, and I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to come back when I get to round 6, because we're going to have a little chat about gauge. So I'm at the end of round 6, and I'm just going to stop here, and I'm just going to check gauge, and all gauge is how tightly you crochet. So I'm just going to measure across, and at this point your square should measure about 13 centimetres or 5 1/4 inches across. If your square is much bigger than this, you may need more yarn. If your square is smaller than this, you'll use less yarn, and if you're happy with that, that's absolutely fine, leave it as it is. If your square is bigger and you're worried about running out of yarn, then you may consider going down a hook size. So for instance, go down from a 4mm hook to a 3.5mm hook, and see if that brings your square down nearer to 13 centimetres or 5 1/4 inches. So now we need to work 3 more rounds, so we have 9 rounds in total, remembering to turn your work after each round. So here we are at the end of round 9, and the reason that we've been turning our work after each round is to prevent twisting and skewing. You'll sometimes find that if you keep working rounds, round and round in the same direction without turning your work, especially when you're working in one colour, it starts to twist. And because this blanket has so many rounds, we want to avoid that spiraling effect. So that's why we're turning our blanket after rounds. We won't turn after every round. Sometimes the pattern will say keep the right side up, but we're turning enough to keep our square nice and square and our edges straight. Now we're going to work round 10. Round 10 is worked with the right side up. So I've got my marker on the front and I'm going to change to Ladybird. My Ladybird here. And I'm going to join my Ladybird in any corner space. Doesn't matter which one. And I'm going to join my yarn by pulling up a loop. So start off by making a loop of yarn just by folding over the tail of the yarn, and I'm going to insert my hook into that corner space and I'm going to pull the loop through, and then I'm going to make one chain just to lock that yarn into place. And this is a round of double crochet. So this is a new stitch, and double crochet is a short stitch. It's a small stitch that's half the size of a treble crochet. So when we do rounds that are double crochet, this first chain does not count as a stitch. So unlike the treble crochet where the first two chains count as a stitch, when we work double crochet rounds, this chain does not count as a stitch. So if you have a look at the pattern, it says to work 2 double crochet into the corner. So we'll do that first. And I'm just keeping this tail of yarn to the side and I'm going to work over it. So to make a double crochet, you insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the 2 loops. So I need to do another one. So insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and that's my 2 double crochet, and I've worked it over the tail. So now I'm going to turn the corner and the pattern says chain 2, so that's 2 chains, and now I'm going to work 2 more double crochet into that same corner space. So I'm going to pull up a loop, it's 1 double crochet, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, and that's 2 double crochet. So there's my corner. I've got 2 double crochet followed by 2 chains and 2 more double crochet, and it makes a nice neat corner. So next the pattern says skip the first stitch. Now when we're counting treble crochet stitches when the right side is facing up, so this was a right side row, we count the loops to the right of the stitch. So we've got the post of the stitch here, and then the loops at the top to the right, that's where we're going to count. So this is our first stitch. So we've got the post of the stitch here with the loops to the right at the top, and we're going to skip this stitch. And the reason that we will sometimes skip stitches through the pattern is because we're using lots of different types of stitches and we're working in the round, and sometimes it's necessary to adjust the stitch count, and the easiest way to do this is just by skipping stitches at the beginning or ends of the rows. So post, loops to the right, I'm skipping that stitch, and I'm going to make a double crochet in the next stitch. So we've got the post of the stitch, loops to the right, so I'm going to double crochet in that stitch, and then I'm just going to double crochet in every stitch along the side. So I'm just inserting my hook under both loops, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. So just under the two loops of the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. And I'm just going to keep going all the way along the edge until I get to the corner. So I've nearly reached the corner with my double crochets, and these are US single crochets. So I'm at the corner now, and I'm going to work the corner in the same way as the previous one. So I'm going to make 2 double crochet, going to chain 2 and 2 more double crochet, remember to skip that first stitch, so I'm going to double crochet into the next stitch, and then I'm going to keep working all the way along that edge with my double crochet. When you get to the corner, work it in the same way. When you get to the next corner, work it in the same way, and then work along, and when we get to here I will show you how to fasten off the round. I'm coming to the end of round 10, last 2 double crochet, and then to fasten off this round I'm just going to insert my hook under both loops of the first double crochet. So I'm ignoring that first chain, and I'm just going to insert my hook under those 2 loops and fasten off in the same way as before. Snip and pull the yarn through. Round 11 is worked with the right side facing up again, and it's cream. So we're going to join a loop of cream in any corner in the same way as before. So fold your yarn over to make a loop, insert your hook into the corner, into the space, pull up a loop of cream, and this is a granny round, so it's the same type of stitches here. So we're going to start off with 2 chains, and exactly the same as before, this counts as our first treble crochet, and then I'm going to make 2 treble crochet. Remember to work over this tail to anchor it in place. So that's 2 treble crochet, chain 2 to make a corner, and then 3 more treble crochet, and that makes a nice tidy corner. And we're now going to work around this square, but this time, because we don't have spaces to work into like the granny rounds before, we're going to count the stitches. And if you have a look at the pattern, First of all, it says to skip 3 stitches. So like the treble crochet, we have the post of the stitch and the loops to the right of the stitch. So that's our first stitch. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then we're going to work 3 treble crochet into the 4th stitch along. So that's this stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3 skip stitches, and then we're going to work 3 treble crochet into the next stitch. And then the pattern says skip 2 stitches and work 3 treble crochet into the next stitch until 2 stitches remain. So I'm just going to work along. So that's 1, 2 skip stitches and work my 3 treble crochet into the next stitch. And then I'm just going to repeat that along. So 1, 2 skip stitches and work into the 3rd. So I'm at the end of this side and I have 2 stitches remaining. So that's 1, 2 stitches. I'm going to skip the last 2 stitches and I'm going to work my corner. And then you just continue round in exactly the same way, remembering to skip 3 stitches at the beginning of the side, and then for the remainder of the side you're skipping 2 stitches. So I'm going to keep working round. So this is this round, worked all the way round. Just like the granny rounds before, when you've worked this round, you're going to turn your work, and it says this in the pattern, so right side down, and then work another granny round in exactly the same way as before. And then the last round of this section is the cornflower blue, and this is worked in exactly the same way as the red ladybird round, except you'll notice in the pattern that it says to make just 1 DC, 2 chain and 1 DC in the corners, rather than the 2 DC, 2 chain and 2 DC that you did for the red. And this is to make sure that we have the right amount of stitches on each side for moving on to the next part of the pattern. So I've completed my centre square to the end of round 13, and also this week we are going to make 4 6 round granny squares, so exactly the same as the centre square but just 6 rounds, and these are going to form the 4 corners of your blanket that have the motifs on, and these are going to be joined later. It's a good idea to get them done now while you're in the swing of granny squares, so that's going to get you ahead. Then we're going to make the little jewels that we join later on, and these are just 1 round granny squares, so these are just the centre square that we started off the other granny squares with, and we're going to make 24 in ladybird, we're going to make 24 in cornflower, 20 in grass, 20 in cream, and 8 using the purple. And this is a really nice job to just do in front of the TV. You don't have to follow the pattern, not much counting to do, just a very simple job. And we're going to make these using the 3.5mm hook, and that's because we need these to be slightly smaller so they fit neatly with the previous rounds in the blanket. And I've got my little hearts bowl here. I don't eat out of this, I just use it for crochet. And I like to sit in front of the television, make my little centres for my granny squares and pop them in the bowl. And if you just make a few here and there when you've got a few minutes, by the time we get to joining them later in the blanket, you'll have them all made. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how to sew in these tails. So first of all, you need to thread your yarn needle, and I do this by folding the yarn over the eye of the needle, give it a pinch, and then it should just slide easily through the eye of the needle. And then I'm just going to thread the needle on the back under a few stitches. Just make sure you can't see the needle on the front, and pull in, taking care not to distort this edge by pulling too tight. And I'm just going to go under a couple of stitches the other way. I'm just going to do the same with this centre tail, over the needle, pull it through, under a couple of stitches, back the other way, snip them off, pop it in the bowl, and there we go. So that's everything you need to know for week 1. Don't worry if you don't finish all of the squares. The only square that you need completed for week 2 is this centre one. All of the other squares will be joining later. I like to make my little squares as I go along, and I keep them in my bowl, and I just make a few every night and drop them in. And if you do the same, by the time we get to joining, you'll have all your little squares made, so there's no rush to do these. And the same with the outside squares. We won't be joining these till very near the end of the cowl, so don't rush to get these done. It's just if you've got a few spare minutes, it's good to get ahead with these. So don't forget to share your work with #SirdarMakes. Join the Facebook group, come and say hi. It's really good fun, and I'll be there too. So that was week 1. I'll see you next week for week 2. And in the meantime, have fun, and I hope you enjoy your granny squares.